Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. We are going to give folks just a few more minutes to get logged in and to join us. We are so excited to kick off the conversation about diversity. So in just a few minutes, we will get started. If you are just joining and you are a Georgetown alum, we would love to hear where you graduated from, what you majored in, maybe what year you graduated. So drop it in the chat and introduce yourself. All right, so we will go ahead and jump right in so that we are not sitting in awkward silence. We need some like jazzy music in the background, right? But again, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. And Hoya Saxa to all of my Georgetown students and alumni. My name is Myja and I am a 2018 graduate of Georgetown University School of Continuing Studies from the Public Relations and Corporate Communications program. So shout out to all my PRCC folks out there. Currently, I am a corporate communications manager at Zoom and the reigning Miss Black USA. I'm so excited to be here and leading the conversation about the importance of diversity in corporate America with a group of dynamic women, all of whom graduated from Georgetown University. Oftentimes, we limit diversity to race and culture, but it covers so much more than that. And today we're going to dive into what diversity and inclusion looks like in the corporate workforce and how it is a strength to making a positive impact in corporate spaces. But before we get started, we want to hear from our lovely panelists. I'd like each of you to introduce yourselves, tell us your current role, what you studied at Georgetown, and what year you graduated. Sana, let's start with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Myja. I'm happy to be here, and this is very exciting. Hi, everyone. My name is Sana Hiraki. I recently graduated in August from the Integrated Marketing Communications program. While I'm still on a job hunt, before going into grad school, I worked as the beauty marketing executive for an international British luxury retailer, Harvey Nichols.
Nice. Alina?
Hi everyone, I'm Alina Sielanger. I graduated in May from the Integrated Marketing Communications program, and I'm currently working as a paid media specialist at the marketing agency Rheingold here in Alexandria.
Absolutely. Miss Tyra?
Awesome. It's so good to see this turnout so far. Hi, everyone. I am Tyra Laster. I had the pleasure of attending Georgetown for the PRCC program along with Myja. I graduated in 2019, and now I'm at Deloitte as a senior consultant, managing all things content and digital marketing.
Nice. And Maddie, last but not least.
Hi everyone, my name is Madeline Santo. I am a junior consultant at a marketing and brand strategy consultancy called Noetic Consultants. I'm an international student and I was born in Indonesia. I graduated from the IMC program about 6 months ago now, and I'm just so honored to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you to our lovely panelists for those introductions. And shout out to all of our Georgetown alumni who are joining us today. So we are going to go ahead and kick off the conversation because we're excited to talk about this important topic. And I know we have plenty of questions at the end. So we want to go ahead and get started so that we have room for that. So kicking it off, in your own words, what is diversity and inclusion to you? Alina, let's start with you.
Yes, absolutely. And so I wrote down this really nice quote. It is empowering people by respecting and appreciating what makes them different. And I just really liked it. And so I wanted to share it with you. And to divide it up a little further, I think diversity itself is basically just the presence of differences and the definition that just we are all different. And then equity is a fair chance for everyone, no matter the race, age, gender, whatever. And then inclusion is that you feel a sense of belonging on where you are at right now.
Absolutely love that. Maddie, let's hop to you. In your own words, what is diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, so diversity to me is about accepting and respecting different perspectives, different cultures, and removing the barriers that prevent people from accessing certain spaces. But it's also important to recognize that diversity is not enough. We also have to recognize that not everybody has had the same opportunities or privileges. So it's important to address that inequity and provide resources and opportunities that will give people the tools they need to succeed. So it's more than just giving people a seat at the table, but empowering them to be a part of the conversation and giving them the tools they need to thrive.
Absolutely. And Sana, what about you? What's diversity? What is inclusion?
I mean, just like you said, we often limit diversity to including just different gender, race, and religion, but we often overlook other aspects like age, disability, language, personality, sexual orientation, different skills and expertise.
Oh, looks like Sana is frozen there, so we'll come back to her. Tyra, what about you? What would you say is diversity and inclusion in your own words?
In my own words, I thought about this question as well, but really off the top of my head, I'm always thinking DEI to me means access. Especially from a corporate standpoint, it's not enough, as Madeline mentioned, to just invite us at the table. What are we doing to retain talent? What are we doing to invite talent to speak up? How are we giving the resources? So, frilling little words here and there when something happens, or, having a good PR email sent out is not enough. But especially from the corporate standpoint, I think it's all about access.
Access. I love that. And Sana, looks like you got it cut off. Would you like to finish what you were saying?
That is bound to happen at some point.
Absolutely, right?
Where did I lose you?
You were talking about we'll just start over. Let's start there.
Okay.
Start over. What is diversity and inclusion to you?
I mean, just like you said, we limit what diversity means. It really not just about gender, race, and religion. We often overlook other aspects like age, disability, language, personality, sexual orientation, different skills and expertise. And I would second Alina by saying that it's really about empowering people and accepting what makes them different.
Absolutely. I love that, right? Diversity is just our differences. It's what makes us different. Someone in that I work closely with at work, he says, diversity is being asked to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance when you get to the party. And then equity is being able to choose a song from the playlist that you want to dance to. So there's so many different perspectives of what diversity is. So thank you for that. And to continue into this conversation, why do you believe diversity is important in the workplace? And how would you say this has impacted our workplace? Tyra, let's start with you.
Yeah, so there are two things I kind of think about when I hear that question. One, going back to access. In the corporate workspace, there's so many different variables that go on each day. And, organizations today are asking themselves, how can we not only bring in talent, but retain talent to make them feel empowered to not move up just to the junior role and leave, but are we promoting them to the senior role? Are we giving them leadership positions? And so, DEI kind of references access and then that retention is what I really kind of think about, those two things that come into play. And especially from the corporate standpoint, we see it all the time. You know, it feels like when things happen in this world, that's when we see organizations say, hey, we're hiring Black and brown people. Hi, we're, you know, trying to do this effort. And it's only lasting for a year or a season. Then it feels like we're kind of back to square one. And I think that when it comes to that DEI aspect, it has to be, what are we doing to bring people to the dance and to make them pick out the song, and doing that the next year, you know? I'm very big on DEI, not just being this hot take for a moment, and then when we all leave the meeting, we're thinking about everything else. What are we doing to have the conversation again and again and again?
Yeah, I love that. So I heard access, I heard retention, and then I heard that proactive approach rather than a reactive approach when something is happening in the world. I love that. And I also would like to address, we had some issues in the beginning with our chat, and it was disabled. It should now be fixed. So we do want to hear from you. We do want to know where you're coming from, where you're joining us from, what year you graduated, what you studied at Georgetown University. And we encourage you just to use the chat to engage with us. If you hear something that you agree with, toss it in the chat. We want to hear from you. So I'll toss it over to Maddie. Why do you believe diversity is important in the workplace, and how has it impacted the workplace?
Yeah, so absolutely, diversity is so important in the workplace. If you only hire people who look like you, who think like you don't open yourself up to fresh points of view, creative ideas, and like what Tyra said, you don't open yourself up to amazing talent. Maybe there's someone out there who don't meet all of the boxes on paper, who don't check these boxes, like, maybe they don't have a master's degree. It doesn't mean that they're not capable. So you really do your organization a disservice by excluding these people from the conversation. And also you do your customers a disservice. If you're a marketer, like I am, you need to be able to speak and connect with them and, empathize with them. And there's no way to do this if you only put yourself in a bubble.
Yeah, yeah. Now, Alina, I know you have a mouthful on this topic here. Why do you believe diversity is so important, and how does it impact the workplace?
Yes, absolutely. And I think this topic is so important because it shouldn't be a topic at all. And what I mean by this is, for me, it is and it has always been the most natural thing in the world to just find someone based on their talent, based on their ideas and their personality and how they fit in the company. And all these other factors that we're including here, like race, gender, age, whatever, they shouldn't matter, because at the end, when you talk to someone and you know that they're great, it doesn't matter where they're coming from. It matters where they are right now in this moment. We all have different backgrounds, we all have different experiences, but we have fought and we have come to this place through hard work and through dedication. And I think that should matter no matter where you are from.
I love that. So really, it should be about your talent, which is what makes you unique. Absolutely. Sana, what about you? Why do you believe it's important? How does it impact the workplace?
Yeah, it really does, because personal biases can be a silent destroyer of the overall team dynamic. And this is why I find it essential to expand into a diverse recruiting pool. So just to give you an example, when I worked in the beauty industry, which is part of consumer goods, beauty is found in everyone. And you really target a lot of audiences, and the campaigns need to adjust accordingly. And marketing, as we all know, has become much more about values than the product itself, and that inclusive strategies can have a positive impact on engagement and brand performance. So if you don't have a diverse team internally, how will your consumers see a reflection or a representation of themselves through the brand?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you spoke about personal biases. So this kind of leads me into my next question. Mag, let's kick this off to you, but what challenges have you experienced in the workplace as someone of a diverse background? And how would you say you've kind of dealt with these things or overcome these challenges?
Yeah, so I previously worked in finance, and finance, as I'm sure many of you know, is an extremely male-dominated space. So at times I often felt like I wasn't being heard, or I wasn't invited into certain spaces, or I was being treated differently because I was a woman. So that was hard on me. It took a toll. It took a toll on my mental health. It made me feel like maybe I'm not as good as, the men in this organization, which was, completely wrong. Of course, I'm capable. Of course, I'm smart. But at times, like being in spaces like that, it can really make you doubt yourself. So for me, what I did was I intentionally moved to a space where I believe I feel, where I'm valued, where my voice is heard. I now work in a small boutique consultancy. We are an all-women powerhouse team, and it's just different. It doesn't mean that, working with all women is the right decision, but we are able to bring a unique perspective, to the table. We're able to see things differently. And yeah, it's just been so much better. And I feel like you just need to make the move that's right for you.
Absolutely. And I will say I am biased because I do believe that women run the world. So kudos to you for working at a place where you do feel loved and appreciated. And it's probably because it's women owned, but we're going to continue to move on with the conversation. Tyra, what about you? What challenges have you faced in the corporate workforce because you are diverse?
Yeah, so, you know, it is one thing to state as a Black woman, we have been through the works when it comes to the corporate space and getting our voice heard, showing up as our authentic selves and not it being questioned or, a side conversation or something that makes us feel like we'll never reach the top, showing up as me. And I think personally, I remember one instance where in my past positions that I was at a table with the CEO at the time, and she was this grand person in all aspects, but we had this conversation about hair. And I tried to tell her, the flows and stories of how it is showing up as a Black woman with our hair and the, stories that we have for days when it comes to that. And she didn't quite get it. And it was in that moment that I realized the magnitude and difference that we're just in two different worlds. And it's one thing to kind of explain to someone, but especially as a Black woman, we are very tired of being a Google. And so it comes to the terms of feeling exhausted. And I think one issue I had to get over is to be okay with not being a Google in the workspace, especially when it comes to things as hair, how I do my makeup, how I present myself, how I talk. And I think that goes greatly into DEI, because one thing they love to say in emails is that, we want people to show up as themselves and bring their authentic self to work. So someone who is from the South, has a twang here and there, and worked in corporate spaces as long as I can remember, it has been a great deal of really understanding what that line they love to put in there really means. And one thing that I always go back to is the conversation of hair as a Black woman, because we are expressive in that, and showing up as that in a corporate workspace can sometimes be a story. So
I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Tyra. And of course, I can attest to that. First, being a Black woman and working in tech spaces.
yes.
And I will say, I've worked in many different capacities in the tech space. And I've found myself to be the only Black woman in most of those spaces.
Yes.
And, as rewarding as it sounds, when we think of the first Black woman to be the vice president, and we think of the first Black woman to do, things of that capacity, it is exhausting to look around and to be the only one in that capacity who looks like me. So I think when it comes to overcoming those challenges, it's about building, climbing that ladder, and then reaching back and pulling up more folks who look like me. Because we have companies who are expressive in DEI, right? And are expressive in DEI efforts. And then when you look at the C-suite, everyone looks the same. So Alina, I'd like to toss it over to you. What challenges have you faced as someone of a diverse background in the corporate workforce? How do you overcome?
Yes, absolutely. And to provide a little bit of context, because I haven't mentioned it before, I'm also an international student like Maddie, and I moved here from Germany. And so I would say my biggest challenge in the American workplace was to, during my job search, because when you apply somewhere, there's this little box that says like, do you need a visa? Yes or no? And as an international student, you gotta say yes. And I found it extremely frustrating to learn that many companies use this as a filter for applicants. So basically just by ticking this box, you're out because they say, you know, it's COVID, we don't hire that much. And so we have a big pool of applicants. So how can we narrow them down? Visas are costly, so we just first cut down the international students. And I think that I'm as capable as everyone else, and I deserve a seat at the interview table if I am qualified for the job, no matter my background. So yeah, I found that really frustrating. And therefore, I was also just focusing my search on companies where I knew that they would be open and really living this DEI vibe. And I'm so happy where I ended up right now, because Rheingold is really amazing in terms of DEI. One of my colleagues recently jokingly said we're almost too diverse, because it's true that we're really a super diverse body of people, and that's really amazing.
Kudos to you. You go, girl. I love that you found a company that you love and that you feel appreciated at, and that you feel like you have a seat at the table, because that's so, so, so important. And so to kind of flip the narrative here and look on the positive side, what would you say are some diversity and inclusion efforts that maybe your current company or a previous company has implemented, and why? Sana, let's start with you.
Yeah, so expanding on what Maddie and Alina have said, when I worked in Dubai and Kuwait market, companies over there prioritized recruiting from their own locals or their citizens. What I found interesting was that they were only allowed to recruit a small percentage of their own locals. So then people like me who weren't citizens of that country were still given a chance. So they really had a ratio of, let's say, local versus international or diverse. And this really helped in expanding and bringing in different talents, different perspectives. So yes, you would give citizens of the country a chance to find jobs, but at the same time, you are bringing in new talent and bringing in diverse professionals who want to add value.
Yeah, love that. And Maddie, I know you've, talked a lot about your women-owned company, which I absolutely love. Are there any DEI efforts there that you strongly believe in? And if so, why?
Yeah, absolutely. We're a small company, but we're doing quite a bit in the DEI space. We have redesigned our client selection process to be a lot more intentional, meaning that prospective clients who are actively and tangibly implementing DEI initiative or whose values align with ours are given higher preference over those who, don't have any at all. We've also invited external trainers to come provide DEI training. We've started dialogues around identifying and mitigating implicit biases, learning about how we can foster allyship, and even things like rehauling the website so that it is ADA compliant, WCAG compliant. Things like that make a difference, because not everyone has the same abilities, the same abilities and capabilities as you. I don't have great eyesight, so for me, making sure that the website is legible is really important to me. But I'm sure it's also going to be a lot of help to people who maybe don't have great eyesight too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important to touch on those, right? Because like I said before, oftentimes we limit diversity to race and culture, but it covers so much more than that. Tyra, let's hop over to you. And I know you know what it's like working in the tech space. So what would you say maybe your current company or a previous company has implemented regarding DEI that you strongly believe in?
Yeah, I'll go into Deloitte. Though Deloitte is such a huge space with a lot going on, one thing I personally love is that they're very transparent in their reporting, the way they kind of present DEI. And one thing in particular is that we have a thing literally called Transparency Report. And it comes out every year, and it's really a good scope of what DEI is at our offering or our space. And it kind of, leaves this moment of wow, this is great. And then also, wow, this is something that we need to work on. And I really pride Deloitte in kind of being that forerunner of just saying, hey, this is who we are. We know we have some things we need to work on, but here are the great things. And just leaving that honest conversation at the table. Because I know when it comes to DEI, sometimes all we're, pushing forward are the great things and what we're trying to do for next year. But I love that Deloitte is kind of taking a step back and saying, hey, this is what we have for this year. And by these numbers, by these stats that they share with us, we're able to kind of make a better way and better chapter for next year. So, and I love that Madeline mentioned, kind of little things like revamping the website. It may seem small to some, but I had the pleasure of kind of helping manage a lot of the GPS DEI efforts that I was on for my project. And one of the things was to revamp the website. And as fun as that seems, I really had to take a moment and ask myself, okay, how are we being 508 compliant? To Madeline's point, it's not just enough to, share a nice image of diverse students that look like they just graduated college and all smiling at the camera, as the banner page, but what else is there? Are we making sure that those who are blind and deaf have, the same access and same digestible preference as we do? So little things like that, to be quite honest with you all, I don't think I thought about, but now that I'm, deep into this content game, if you will, it's really something you have to ask yourself. And so I applaud Deloitte for making sure that is a check mark in this space. So.
Absolutely love that. Alina, what about you? Any DEI efforts you can think of that you just love, you adore, you strongly believe in?
Yes, absolutely. I'm really happy about all the DEI efforts that my company does. One I particularly enjoy is our lunch and learns about diversity and inclusion. And so I would say every month we have like 2 hours during lunchtime where there's 1 hour with a panel of designated diverse people who talk about a specific topic. One of the most recent ones was sexual orientation. And then they really share their experiences and thoughts, and everyone can listen in and understand and relate to these people. And afterwards, we have another hour. So the second hour is then like more of a safe space chat where everyone is invited to share their questions, thoughts, ideas. And I feel this is really helping with the company embracing it. It's not just an agenda item, it's something that people look forward to. They're like, oh yeah, nice, we have our DEI lunch again, and then we'll all eat together and just hear these amazing stories, and everyone is super excited. And that's what I really love about it.
I love that. And I'd like to share really quick. At Zoom, I was fortunate enough to help launch our ERGs, or it stands for Employee Resource Groups. So these are groups of employees that represent a demographic of people. So for instance, we have Zoom Soul for Black and Brown folks who work at Zoom. We have Zoom Pride for members of the LGBTQI plus community. We have veterans at Zoom. We have women at Zoom. We have Somos Zoom for those who are of Latin descent. And so, it's a place of belonging. It's a place of inclusion. It's a place where I feel, my voice is heard. It's a place where I feel like I can vent, I can talk, other people understand me. And so I think that's one of the DEI efforts, at my current company that I really adore. So thanks to each of you for sharing that. Now, would you consider diversity a strength? I know that's what we named our panel today, but do you truly believe that diversity is a strength? And if so, how would you say you've used your unique and diverse skills to impact the workplace? Sana, let's start with you.
Absolutely. Diversity is a strength. It creates a safe space. And I always represent myself as someone with semi-global experience, someone who speaks different languages, which really adds to the communication skills, all that end up making me an empathetic leader as well. And when you're an empathetic leader, you navigate the demands of the workplace. It helps build trust among, your coworkers, and find that uniqueness, with other people, and find that commonality with other people as well. It's also a chance for you to know more about their culture, their religion, and not in the way that you thought you knew. And it will always increase dialogue around that comment and making it a common topic.
Yeah, absolutely. How cool is it to say that you have semi-global experience, that you had an opportunity to
I
work
know, it
in
makes me
Dubai? That
fancy.
is awesome, 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 awesome. Alina, let's kick it over to you. Is diversity a strength? And how would you say you've used your uniqueness, your diversity to impact the workplace?
Absolutely. Yes, I think I wouldn't be here if I wouldn't say absolutely yes to that answer. I would be in the wrong room. And I would like to especially touch on representing international students on this aspect of me. First of all, I would say every culture brings their cultural strengths also with you. Everyone is different, but for example, for me, the cliche is true. I'm a German, I'm structured, I'm always on time. You never see me a minute late in Zoom meetings. So I think that is a strength. And in general, I can tell you being an international student in itself is a hard process with many, many ups and downs. So whenever I hear the word international students, I think about openness to change, adaptability, endurance, resilience, problem solving skills. Because just getting all the visa together, applying for a school abroad, writing tests that are not in your own language, I think that's all very tough. And I think everyone who has even made it to the US with a student visa deserves a lot of respect.
Yeah, yeah. I would agree with that. I wanted to touch on your point about, completing a job application and having to click the box, about needing a visa. I can attest to that because there's also a little box that asks you what your ethnicity is. And so when you click that Black African American box, there's always this level of anxiety that comes with it. Like either you might hire me because you're trying to fill a quota, or you may not hire me because you've already judged me because I clicked that little box. So I applaud you for sharing that, and I can attest to your resiliency in that. So kudos to you for your resilience and your, I guess, willingness just to keep going and not let that little box discourage you. Tyra, let's kick it over to you. Would you consider diversity a strength? How do you impact the workplace with diversity, with your diverse skills, with your uniqueness?
Yeah, I love this question because it really goes back into this space and this conversation that we are in today, right? And yes, to answer your question, I think not only diversity is needed, but it's a must, and especially in organizations today. We can even bring it back to, this wheelhouse and how we're all familiar with communications and PR and marketing, right? So just think if there was no us in conversations and at the table, just imagine campaigns like that Pepsi campaign with Kendall Jenner that just went completely left, and just imagine the lack of conversation and awareness that that table must have had at Pepsi to, push forward with, something like that. And so when I hear, is diversity and, is diversity, equity, inclusion, is it important? Of course, because if it wasn't for people like us from different backgrounds, conversations, ways of doing things, then we would have, campaigns that are pushed out like that are just so blind and deaf to the way that we think in this world. And so I think it's a needed practice for all of us. And conversations like this are just only going to help, the audience to kind of open up and see, okay, this is the way I can present DEI. And then for us to kind of learn from each other. I love hearing, the points, Elena, that you mentioned is just, it's more than race and ethnicity. It's also that box that asks me if I'm an international student, and something that I frankly don't think about that much, but it's something I can take back with me and, have conversations in my company and then also with my friends. But to answer your question, Myja, diversity is a big yes, a big must, and it's only conversations like this that push that yes forward.
Yeah, love that. Love that. All right, Maddie, kicking it over to you. So I guess your answer is yes, too. So let me ask, how is diversity a strength? How have you used your uniqueness, your diverse skills to impact the workplace?
Yeah, so I think that diversity, when, like for me personally, I'm able to approach things differently. I'm able to bring a global perspective to the work that I do. Like, I grew up in Thailand and Singapore, but I am Indonesian. So I have all these different cultures that I love and grew up with and can, share with others and see through that lens from. And I'm able to communicate with clients who maybe come from different backgrounds. We can connect on that. And also to echo what Alina said, just being told no so many times just because I'm an international student, just because I need that visa. I think you just grow thicker skin. You become more resilient. You're able to be more flexible. You're more adaptable. I've been rejected like maybe 100 times when I was applying for jobs. So it really does make you stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've heard this reoccurring theme of just resilience, and I definitely can agree with that. So I'd like to ask you all one last question, and then we're going to kick it over to our audience so they can ask their questions as well. As an advocate for diversity and inclusion, what advice do you have for people who want to get involved and influence change in this space? Alina, let's start with you.
Yes, that's a really great question. And I think everyone who is here tonight or who's watching the recording has done the right step already, the first right step. And this is to listen and to learn and to have the desire to learn more about this topic. And I think this is where every great conversation starts, every great topic. And so I'm really, really happy that so many of you have come here today to listen to us. And then as the second step is to actually become an advocate, to start a conversation, to make it a thing for people and for companies. For example, in the application process, you can ask, what about DEI, so that they can really see, okay, that's important for you. When you work in a company, you can ask, what are our current efforts? You could become part of the task force like Myja or like Tyra, who are actively working and helping their companies to become more inclusive. And I think that just doing these things will bring us a long way.
Yeah. And Alina, once you start hosting DEI Lunch and Learns, you let us know because we'll be right there. Maddie, let's toss it over to you. What advice do you have for people who want to get into this space, who want to get involved and may not know where to start?
Yeah, so I think my advice would be comfortable being uncomfortable. This is not an easy, topic. This is not the most, this is not a space where you'll know everything immediately. So get comfortable with that. Be curious, ask questions, but don't forget to be empathetic. And, tell those who maybe are in the decision makers in your company that this is something important to you, that it's important to, your friends and your coworkers, and then hopefully that will help start the conversation.
Yeah. Sana, would you like to chime in here? What advice do you have for folks?
Always remember and keep in mind that whatever your background is, you will bring something to the table and ideas that people in the company have not thought about. Always be confident about whatever you're bringing and be down to earth as well. Become a leader that would amplify the voices of other people. When you are a diverse person, it is also a way for you to help other people in that similar situation to appreciate their own values, their own strengths, become an ambassador. And lastly, people love learning new things without them knowing. So, become that person.
Absolutely. All right. Last but not least, Miss Tyra, what advice do you have for people who want to get into this space?
I love these answers. So I would say two things. One, show up as you and be empathetic. So what I really mean by that is that conversations like this today, you learn by showing up as who you are. There's no sugarcoating. There's no, figuring that you know all the answers. Sometimes it's okay to say, oh, wow, I truly did not know that. And now it becomes a conversation of, okay, great, now I know, and I can go forth and conquer and have conversations like this tomorrow. So showing up as who you are. And then also from an organization standpoint, once people bring in those who are truly themselves, it looks at leadership and says, okay, maybe we need to tailor this to invite this person or tailor this to include this person. And then you have people actually continuing to go in DEI and push forward that narrative. And then next, I know one of you said it already, but really empathy is so powerful in conversations like this, in space like this, because it really helps ground efforts to be sincere. And when you don't know, you don't know. And I'm butchering Maya Angelou's quote, Dr. Maya Angelou's quote, but one of my favorite quotes from her is, you know, be okay with not knowing what you didn't know when you didn't know it. And it's so much beauty in that. And I think for DEI, if they could just plaster that, you know, as their definition, I think that would be, you know, a great source of comfort, because as somebody mentioned, you know, you're coming into these conversations feeling uneasy and uncomfortable, and you're not really sure what to say or to say anything at all. But if you show up as yourself and have empathy, the conversation will be gold.
Absolutely. I love the idea of having empathy, being an empathetic leader. I think working in the DEI space, and this is something that I've had to learn, is whatever you are working on, you always have to look at it from the receiver's end. So when you talk about making the website, when you talk about building out those products, when you talk about building out the marketing plan, you don't want to look at it from your eyes. You should be looking at it from the receiver's end, and always having a willingness to learn, right? So understanding what international students, what their challenges are, understanding what Black folks and their challenges are, and stuff like that within the workplace. So I think it's so important to be empathetic and always having a willingness to learn. Okay, so we are going to kick it over to the audience, and I'm super excited for your questions here. So we had some pre-submitted questions, and then we also had some live questions. So I'm going to try to go back and forth. Here in panelists, I'm going to ask that maybe one or two of you answer each question, so everyone will not get a chance to answer each question, because I do want to get through each of these questions. So let's jump in. What would you recommend for someone interested in working in corporate, but also interested in helping people in global causes? Is there a way to combine the two? I'll give this over to Sana and either Maddie or Alina, whichever one you guys want to answer. Sana, let's start with you.
If I understood the question correctly, so that person wants to work in a corporate, but then wants a brand with a higher order purpose? Is that?
It sounds like they want to work in corporate, but they're interested in global causes. So how do you kind of combine the two?
I mean, now that I'm on a job hunt, I always look at the companies that, you know, have higher order purpose. Yes, I love working in corporate, but then what does this company do? Do they set aside some of their profit to give, you know, for environmental causes, for famine, for, you know, anything that, you know, a disaster that is going on? Are they helping? So maybe that's a way to kind of look at it. Or you can always kind of apply to a part-time job that is with, you know, the United Nations, or volunteer, or with a nonprofit as well. So that's another way to kind of combine working in corporate and, you know, a company with that would help.
Yeah,
causes.
Absolutely. Alina or Maddie, didn't any one of you want to tackle this?
I can maybe, you know, chime in with my thoughts. Well, I think the first thing that you need to do is find a company whose values align with yours. It's not always going to be, you know, a big company. It might not be that super Fortune 500 company that you've always dreamed of working at. Sometimes it's a smaller business. I learned that, you know, myself. So look at their values, look at what they're doing, you know, read about them, research their initiatives, and see if that's something that you're interested in and would be willing to talk about, or even, you know, bring up in the interview or something. So definitely look for the company whose values align with yours. I think that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Okay, so this one is a really good question here. If you faced adversity in the job search or interview process, specifically on getting your foot into the door, what are your tips on overcoming closed doors? Alina, I'm going to toss this over to you.
Yeah, that is a tough question, especially with the closed doors, how to reopen closed doors. I personally think it's easier to open new doors than to rattle on the doors that have already been shut in your face. But I think my own job hunt might be a good example. So first, and I don't want to put any shade on my employer, not at all, but first I just sent an application And I didn't hear back, and then I got rejected because I just sent an application like so many other people did. And then I thought about like, okay, what can I do here? And then I started reaching out to people, having a conversation. So the company was speaking at our university at Georgetown, actually. And then I connected with the person who spoke and reached out to him and had an informational interview. And he was really excited to meet me. And so in a way, it felt like a closed door at first because I was rejected in the first place. But then just by building these personal connections, by starting the conversation with someone who is willing to listen, and by showing who you truly are, I managed to get the internship. I am now a full-time hire, so it couldn't have gone better. And yeah, I just feel like it's always the best strategy to connect with people and to speak with people. So if it's, for example, a bit of a larger company, then you can just say, okay, with this person, I didn't click, but there's maybe this boss or like someone else in the company I can talk to. So that's what I would do.
Absolutely. Alina said, move over, let me talk to somebody else. Sana, I know you are still in the job hunt kind of process, so you have a completely different perspective. How do you overcome closed doors?
You know what? When one door closes, God opens 100 more beautiful doors. And I'm waiting on his timing for that. So, I just keep on applying. And like Alina said, if it's a big company, try to navigate around that and see what if there's, another department or another hiring manager to talk to. Give yourself a quota, like I'm going to apply to 10 jobs today and 15 jobs tomorrow. And that way you really feel that you are applying to so many different jobs and you're not just stuck on that, closed door.
Absolutely love that. Okay, so we have Miss Tatiana, who is in her first semester of the PRCC program. Woo woo. She says, how do you, and Tyra, this one's for you. I want to toss this to you. It says, how do you approach a situation in which your employer is implementing DEI as a performative measure, as opposed to a foundational element of the organization's infrastructure?
That seems like a twofold question. One, I think it's important that they are implementing in some way. As a tracker or a based off performance, I can see you being like, that's a little awkward and that doesn't really get to the root of DEI. But I would encourage you, Tatiana, that, really kind of make sure that you have a presence and a voice in that conversation. And I think it is okay to mention, though it is cool that you want to make sure that this is a performative space and that you want to push forward DEI in that sense, really kind of encourage them to think about other ways to look at it. And if they are resistant, which I understand that sometimes corporations and companies and managers can be a little bit, narrow in what they want to do and how their approach is, I would encourage you to probably, move around. And I think it goes back a little into the other questions I live by. And I think my HBCU taught me this, that if you hear no, ask someone else. There is no such thing as no, at least in my world. I feel like you can just ask someone else and get a better answer. But Tatiana, I would encourage you to really kind of sit with them and ask them, are we looking at these in other lenses? Are not just a performative approach, because that can backfire for a lot of employees. We could come into things where they feel like it's not really ethical or they feel like it's not genuine. And so really encourage that manager or that other employee to kind of sit back and think about what they're about to push out.
Absolutely. And I just want to chime in on that really, really, really quick. I wanted to say that sometimes you will get into places where DEI efforts are performative, but you have to make sure that what you're doing and how you contribute to the DEI effort is not performative. So sometimes you can't think about what other people are doing or why they're doing what they're doing, and focus more on what you're doing while you're at the company and how you want to contribute. So thanks for that, Tyra. Okay, so I'll open this to the panel, whoever wants to tackle this one. It says, can you recommend formal models or books, podcasts you lean on as leaders? Any role models, any books, any podcasts you might listen to? Alina, I
There
see
is
you
a
brought yourself on mute.
podcast, and it's hosted by the very beautiful lady that is our our host here tonight. It's called Ask Maj, and Myja is there always talking with really amazing people from all ways of life about diversity and so many other important topics. And I think it's really inspiring and can definitely recommend.
Yes.
Okay,
Alina.
who's cutting onions? Thank you so much for that, Alina.
I
Anyone
love
else?
Alina, I
Any
love
leaders?
that so much. I was just about to jump on. I'm like, I don't want to make her blush, but I think Myja is a great example as someone who not only does the work, but also vocalizes conversations like this. And so she does have a podcast where it's really a plethora of topics, but she hones in on conversations like this one today, DEI, and the importance of having people that look and talk and walk like us in spaces that are big and small. Another good book that I would encourage everyone to read is So You Want to Talk About Race. I'm forgetting the author at the moment. If anyone remembers, feel free to put it in the chat, and as well, I'll mention it later too. But that book is so essential to corporate spaces, nonprofit spaces, everywhere. It really hones in on not just the approach of race and how to have those conversations with people who don't look like you or think like you, but also how to navigate that from logistics and how to think about things when you are just meeting at odds with someone who just doesn't understand where you're coming from. So again, I'd encourage everyone to really pick up the book, So You Want to Talk About Race.
Absolutely. And I will say too, I think when it comes to leaders, I encourage you to find folks who are in your, I guess, career path, career range, career journey. And I'm big on reading stories. So, when I see someone that I aspire to be like, or someone who's in a position that I aspire to be in, I'm always reading their story to figure out maybe how they got there, what their resiliency looked like. And so I would definitely say maybe find some, role models that are in your career path. Okay, next question here. This is a really, really, really good one. So we'll start with Alina with this one. How do you overcome, I believe it was Alina who talked about this. I'll either toss it to Alina or Maddie on this one. It says, how do you overcome imposter syndrome? Have you ever encountered racist interactions with coworkers and how did you handle them? How do you navigate power dynamics and corporate culture?
So I can start first, and I'm so happy that I have never encountered something like this. I have never felt any less in my company, in any company I've worked with, or at school. So I'm really, really happy about that. But I'm always very vocal when it comes to my rights and what I think is right. So if you ever feel like not treated right, I would definitely not just let it happen, but start a conversation with HR, with leadership, with your boss, with whoever can help you here, because everyone I work with says like they love that I stand up for myself. And I think that this is what everyone should do, because you're worth it. And this is something that's not acceptable. And so don't accept it. And I'm happy to toss it over to Maddie.
Thank you, Alina. And I think you're not alone if you feel like you have imposter syndrome. I have it 100%. I know that all of us must have felt it at one point in our lives. I think what you can do to kind of mitigate that is, first of all, separate your feelings from the fact. There are times where you're going to feel stupid, but know that you're not. Know that you're completely capable. And just because you maybe had one slip up, it doesn't mean that that you are what you think you are. You're not an imposter. And also accentuate the positive things about yourself. You didn't get this far by being, an imposter. You got this far by being you, your authentic self, your smart, brilliant self. So, embrace that and just be you. Recognize that you don't have to be perfect, but just show up and be the best that you can be.
Absolutely. Tyra, did you want to chime in on this?
Oh, Myja, we've talked about this a lot. I think you know, being in a space like the organization I'm with today, it's a lot, it's fast and it's big. And, you know, you have so many smart people who know things. And I think with this recent promotion, I've asked myself, like, can I do this? Am I supposed to be here? But the answer is always yes. And gratefully, I have friends and family and my mama who make sure that I know that every single day. And I love the point that Maddie made of just showing up as yourself. Sometimes that is half the battle. I hope everyone on this call knows that you don't have to be perfect every single day, but as long as you show up, that literally takes away half the stress and anxiety and really eases the mind, because once you do that and you show up as your authentic self, then everything else will just fall into place. So imposter syndrome is, you know, a thing that will get and eat at your mind, but it's not true. It never was true. And I think if you just whoosh that away, everything else will be easy.
Absolutely. And really quick, I'd like to chime in and then we're going to close out so that we are being respectful of folks' time. But I will say, I think there is no formula to mitigating imposter syndrome. I don't think there is a formula to, you know, getting rid of that or combating that. I think you just have to make up in your mind that wherever you are exactly where you're supposed to be. Whether it's because you reopened a closed door, because you moved past this person and went and spoke to the CEO, or because you just found the table and pulled up your own chair. You have to, you know, remember that you're there because you're absolutely supposed to be there. And so I think as working as a Black woman in the tech space, I've had all types of, I wouldn't call them racist, I would call them microaggressions, whether it be an ignorant microaggression, meaning folks don't know the magnitude of what they're saying, or whether it's a blatant microaggression. I've had a white male tell me that my hair reminds him of his dog. I don't know if that was ignorant or not, but I've had all types of microaggressions like that. So I think it's one of those things where you have to combat the imposter syndrome and remember why you're there. So my job is I am an advocate for women leadership. I love women, especially Black women. And so my role, my passion, my mission is to reach back and pull up more Black women into these leadership positions. So when I think of those white males and those other people who tell me my hair looks like their dog, or give me other microaggressions, or won't address me by my title, or refuse to say my name right, even when it's spelled correctly in the email, I remember that my mission is to reach back and to pull more women who look like me into these spaces. So again, going back to the idea of just remembering why you are where you are, believing that you belong there, and going back to your why you're contributing to that place. So I just want to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you to everyone who joined us here today. Shout out to all of our Georgetown alumni. Hoya Saxa, again, this has been incredible. Just hearing your stories, you all have taught me something new about, you know, just diversity in the workplace and coming from your different perspectives. So I'd like to say thank you, thank you, and thank you. And we hope that you all have been inspired and learned something along the way. And we wish you a good night.